Thank you all for having me here today. I'm excited to be with this group. I did a little research about your group, and I understand that you're a bunch of fun-loving people. That's the story, I guess. You like to learn, you like to have fun, you like to meet people, right? That's pretty much your charter. Yeah, it's an exciting organization. How many of you have had a presentation or remember a presentation from American River Conservancy already? Raise your hand. All right, quite a few of you. Well, my presentation is going to be different. Everybody's presentation is different. My focus today is going to be on the Conservancy for the first half, or about third, and then I'll focus a lot more on Wakamatsu Farm. As Nancy mentioned, I've been a docent at Wakamatsu Farm since the Conservancy purchased the property. It's how I discovered ARC, and it's a passion of mine that has taken me on a journey that's brought me to this room and to many other places, and even to Japan. So as Nancy mentioned, I'm the development director for the American River Conservancy. I started as a docent in 2011. I've led countless tours at the farm. And I was actually hired in 2016 to plan the Sesquicentennial Festival, a 4-day celebration of Japanese American heritage, arts and culture, and a very successful event it was. Sort of the crowning pinnacle of, I guess, my Wakamatsu career. So again, I'm going to talk first about the Conservancy and our pillars of conservation, education, and stewardship. So what we do is watershed conservation. Does anybody not know what a watershed is? Like a big bathtub that collects water, but it's the land, and it filters through our stream systems and goes eventually out to the river and gets into the water cycle, becomes rain, and starts all over again. That's a watershed. Watersheds are obviously critical for life, and what we do is protect wildlife habitat, agricultural land or working land, and recreational spaces and cultural resources through land purchases from willing donors and sellers, and also conservation easements. We also steward the land that we have acquired, that we still maintain. And we also do environmental education. That definitely connects to your charter too, so we're big into education as well. Place-based experiential learning that connects people to their environment. That's our thing too. Since 1989, that's how long we've been around, we're in our 36th year, we've protected over 30,000 acres in the American and Cosumnes River watersheds. And these are vital riparian oak woodland habitats and endangered species habitats, and also headwaters. We've completed nearly 100 land conservation projects, provided over 35 miles of trails in El Dorado County, and we've delivered environmental education to many thousands of people. I would say a conservative guess at this point would be about 50,000 people. We have also restored, enhanced, and improved many thousands of acres of disturbed, damaged forests and habitats. So that's the nutshell of who we are. How did we get started? South Fork, American River in Coloma. Woohoo, beautiful place, right? The do-gooders at the time, and you know, the late 80s, were very concerned about some illegal development that was going on in the river canyons. So they got very active about it, and they wanted to preserve those scenic, beautiful places instead of seeing rows of McMansions right along the river. The idea was to preserve the land for everybody so everybody can enjoy it. So in many ways, the rafting community has a debt to ARC, and owes certainly the protection of those beautiful places to the Conservancy's effort to watch guard what's going on in those canyons. And then what we do is we really balance that development that's going on in our county. That stuff you're seeing down in El Dorado Hills is taken over all those beautiful places that we used to enjoy, pasture lands. And we balance that out with the value of natural landscapes, what natural landscapes do for the community and how that benefits us. And really, at the end of the day, the entire community benefits from ARC's work in great. And that's also in financial, it's aesthetic, it's health, it's human, it's animals, it's plants, it's the whole 9 yards. So, you know, we're the environmental do-gooders, and you have a local land trust. You're actually fortunate to have a local land trust doing this work. And the idea is that at the end of the day, we only protect what we love. We only love what we understand, and we understand what we are taught. This group understands that concept probably better than most. You have to understand what you're loving. And that's that environmental education piece of things too. That's why the Conservancy does all those things. The legacy of your local land trust is that we preserve rivers and land for life in perpetuity. And that's as close to forever as you can get in a world, right? As long as the powers that be exist, we are the lands that we've preserved. Over 30,000 acres will be preserved in perpetuity. That is our legal responsibility for the lands that we have acquired. Even if the Conservancy didn't exist, it's our responsibility to make sure that those lands are protected forever. That's our responsibility. And there are actually over almost 1,300 land trusts in America that have protected over 61 million acres of land. Not a lot of people know that. It's far more than national parks. Far more than national parks. Small grassroots efforts like our Conservancy have been doing this across the nation because people care about places that they're connected to and land that also brings value to them and to their community and to future life in their communities. And there's over 150 California land trusts that have preserved over 6 million acres in California. That's a lot of land too, but there's only one Conservancy that is preserving the Upper American and Upper Cosumnes River watershed, and that is ARC. And that again is a huge benefit to our community. Why is that important? Why do we protect land? We protect land because basically we're protecting your source of clean drinking water. And as I tongue-in-cheek say, headwaters and fresh water is only important if you depend upon water for life. You know, just saying. How many in here depend on water for life? Just, you know anybody that does? So, yeah, you can see here that you have this map of where all the water in California is. I imagine a lot of you people here understand that that is the tap that's flowing down to the Southern California all comes from the north. And the 17 rivers that flow from the western slope of the Sierras, we're kind of like right here in the middle. This is where the American and the Cosumnes River watershed drain out through the Bay Area. And the American River is the source of clean drinking water for the Sacramento region and beyond. So the work that we do in the headwaters area is vital to life downstream, AKA Sacramento, and then also out into the Bay Area through the Sacramento River. Again, it's a big bathtub collecting water, and we dam it up to preserve it like Folsom Lake. There's many dams on the American River, but there are no major dams on the Cosumnes River. The Cosumnes River and the American River have 3 main tributaries, 3 main rivers, South, Middle, and North Forks. And while the American River is heavily dammed, the Cosumnes River is not dammed. It's the last free-flowing river on the western slope. That's a big deal because that means that the salmon can continue to flow. That means the waterways are much more like they were before human habitation, right? And so preserving that river is very important. Remember, we operate in the headwaters space, so that's the source of those those river systems. And so also there's groundwater benefits. We all understand wells and so forth, and all those aquifers that are filling up that we're drawing out of. All of that is part of the water system, of course. So where's the actual area? This is a map that goes all the way up to the North Fork, down to the North Fork of the American, down to the South Fork of the Cosumnes, right? And I've talked about, you know, the watershed. Here's Lake Tahoe, here's Folsom Lake here. So our area is basically protecting these upper waterways and upper watershed. And then when you get down to Folsom and so forth, there's other environmental conservation organizations down there. We're often confused with the American River Parkway. A lot of those other smaller land trusts and conservation organizations that are focusing on where more population is. Again, we're often confused with them, but our area is this wild space up here that of course is full of fuel for wildfires, right? So we have a lot of work going on as much as we can manage with the small and mighty staff that work on the headwaters and fuels reduction in the properties that we own, okay? Which is actually a spit in the bucket in El Dorado County. 30,000 acres is not that much in El Dorado County, but it does make a dent. And all these little orange spaces in here are actually the areas that we protect. And what conservation seeks to do, the Land Trust Conservation seeks to do, is create connected corridors for wildlife and for plants to move and migrate. And so we look, when we're doing acquisitions, at where land is already protected by maybe the Forest Service, the BLM, so forth, because we want protected corridors of land. And where do animals and plants thrive the most? They thrive in the riparian areas, right? Where there's water, of course, because water is life. So we focus on those areas that are most vulnerable, by the way, also to development, because people with money and developers, big developers, want to develop land that's desirable to humans, and that's usually near water, right? That's the most primo land. Everybody wants to live near water, right? So we're disrupting that by creating those pockets and channels to preserve it in perpetuity, because if you don't do that, when development comes in and it paves down the forest or paves down the woodlands and you cut down all those heritage oak trees, they're gone for hundreds of years. And that kind of space doesn't recover in the same way ever again. It's gone for good, basically. So that's our job. That's what we're doing for the future. So during a typical year, we permanently conserve land via acquisitions, again, from willing donors and sellers. We don't take anybody's land. We also don't have a tax income. This county doesn't have any kind of taxes that benefit the Conservancy directly. And then we also do conservation easements, and then an easement is where maybe a farmer who owns hundreds of acres says, I never want my land paved over, I always want it wild, I always want cattle to be able to produce here or do my own thing for the next generation. I want it to be saved, so they'll contact ARC, and ARC will work with them. We're looking for those connected corridors, remember, and we'll purchase a conservation easement from them. We give them money to put a lien on their property. That means they will never be able to develop, and in the future, in perpetuity, nobody will ever be able to develop that land, okay? So that's the conservation piece. The stewardship is that of the 30,000+ acres that we've preserved, we've turned about half of that land over to state and federal agencies for them to protect forever. So that might be Forest Service, BLM, state parks, Fish and Wildlife, those kinds of agencies. And it's their responsibility then to take it over. And as long as they exist and they're allowed to continue to operate, the land will be preserved. We can't possibly steward 30,000 acres. We're a small and mighty staff. There's about 8 of us that are full-time. And then there's maybe, you know, at times maybe 9 or so more that are part-time or seasonal workers. So it's a small and mighty organization. We steward those 14,000 acres, so I always say this. I own 42 acres in Georgetown, okay? It's unimaginable to think of the responsibility of 14,000 acres. You've got mudslides, road washouts, fire, you've got, you know, all kinds of manner of environmental things going on at any time, and it's our job as the stewards of the property that we still own to take care of that land, make sure people can still get into it and take care of it. So stewardship, education, over 2,000 people of all ages a year go through our environmental education programs. We'll talk a little bit more about those things in a bit. We offer over 80 public programs to about 700 people. We monitor river sites. We clean up riverways, do big river cleanups. And then we also support a lot of volunteers. We're very much a volunteer-driven and supported organization, usually about 8,000 hours a year. And we manage at least one large event each year that's enjoyed by at least 400 people. And I've put Ripe Area Festival cards on the table. I'm going to talk more about that later. But that event I've been managing for a year is this Sunday. So I'm a little busy right now, but I'm super happy to be here to talk to you. And I hope you'll take a card with you, and I hope you'll share it with you. We'll talk more about that event in a minute. So connecting communities to place, that is kind of the foundation of what we do. We want people to love those places, so they want to protect them. So that means getting them in touch with nature. Working lands, definition of that is basically a land that's maintained for agriculture or maybe forestry or somehow supports the food and or fiber industries. Habitat restoration partnerships, cultural resource stewardship, that's Wakamatsu Farm and many other cultural sites that we've owned. Recreation is big for us, and programs and workshops, volunteers, we've talked about, experiential education, supporters, and then of course river and land conservation. So here's some examples of ARC projects. Over 30,000 acres and counting, as I mentioned. Look at all the ranches and farms. These are projects. Look at all the trails. You get the theme, right? We protect places that are producing food, usually, and or we have created trails. And we are responsible for that 35 miles, whether it's on land that we now currently own or land that we owned in the past. We'll bring a trail crew in. That's part of the process because we want people to go out there and see those beautiful river canyons. So if you've been out to Lewis Ranch or Cronin or Magnolia, some of the more popular places, you've been on a land that ARC originally purchased, put a trail on, and turned over to a state agency. How many of you have been to any of these places? Awesome. Great. I'm glad you all are all getting outside. It's really important for your mental health. I want to talk about El Dorado Ranch. That's our current biggest acquisition project. This has been going on for about 10 years. Our acquisition projects take a long time to raise money. Where does the money come from? Usually it comes from huge grants that are available from a state or a federal level. And there's a lot going on at the federal level. I can also tell you that most of our funding comes from a state level. We live in a very environmentally friendly state, so there's funding available for what we do according to the 30 by 30 plan, of course, and many other organizations that are part of that. But it also comes from generous donors who are in our community that care about these places. Mountain bikers, hikers, kayakers who want these places preserved, and they want access to a new place. They want an exciting new frontier to go to. So that's what El Dorado Ranch is this giant ranch that was owned by a developer that's been selling us pieces in phases because it's hard to come up with that much money at once. So we've already protected over 4,000 acres. We've got about 3,000 acres to go. It's on the Cosumnes River, as I told you, the wild river, the last one on the western slope, where there are no trails to get into this place. So it's very exciting to the community. It's got all these beautiful benefits. It's got wild running salmon on it. That's cool too, all this wildlife. And once we acquire the whole thing, we'll turn it over to Fish and Wildlife, and it will become El Dorado County's first state wildlife area with a trail system. And we had to buy parcels of land recently so that we could put a trailhead into it. And this is kind of an amazing success story because we were like, okay, it won't work to get a road into where we thought it was going to go, and it's just going to cost too much. So let's buy this parcel. It's for sale. Work out all of that. And who's going to give us money? Like, we don't have any money for that. Well, we asked our generous supporters who were so wonderful to donate over $125,000 for us. Just ask, right? They want these lands. It's something they want to see happen. So now we could put our trailhead where it needs to go. So if you want to help out ARC with land acquisition, you can certainly talk to us and we can put you on to whatever it is that's new for us. And this is the big one right now. Another one that we just actually wrapped up in the headwaters. Remember I talked about how important headwaters is? And basically it was about a 10,000 acre headwaters project that took almost 10 years to basically turn what was old logging area, which is very damaged, disturbed, and messy land, full of fuels, and have created a space now that is much more fuel resistant. Many partnerships across counties because of where it's located. It's actually in Placer County, this one. And did all these things to restore the land as close as it was before human footprint was on it. So we had scientists and educators and people come out there to partner with us to do experiments, long-term experiments to figure out if this is actually a good method for fuels reduction. So that land will tell us a story eventually of whether or not what we're doing is making sense, how we should modify it. We do know we definitely need to be burning up there, and we don't have the money for that yet, but it may come. It's not enough to just cut down trees, chip them and put them on the ground. You have to do something with all that fuel, right? And we also built trails up there, right? So this is actually, you might have met this man who came to you to speak to you a few years ago. This is the executive director of the Conservancy, Alan Ergot, for 30 years before Elena DeLacy took it over. He's standing there surveying, what do we do about this culvert? So, this kind of thing disrupts the natural flow of water on the ground. Humans want to channel it so they can make roads. The land doesn't need or want that. If you want to replenish the aquifer, it's got to roll across. It's got to create meadows that become those filters and saturate the ground with groundwater. But you can see the difference here to a densely packed forest. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Stewardship programs, managing over those 14,000 acres. I mentioned, all these kinds of things that go on, trying to bring back the wildlife, trying to restore the watershed, trying to restore those natural flows. So that's stewardship. Recreational trails and open spaces, I mentioned that too. We build a lot of trails. We want to make sure that we are providing that service to the community because those trails promote healthy communities. They maintain connections to the environment. They increase tourism. They increase property values. And they aid in our mental and our physical health. We all know that. Lots of you get out there, you know it. What happens when you touch the earth on your hands or your feet, right? So if you see a little marker like this somewhere or like this, you'll know it's an ARC trail. Environmental education. I mentioned, putting at least 2,000 people a year through environmental ed, nature camp, field trips, et cetera, et cetera. You might all be really interested in these two, this California Naturalist certification and this Climate Steward certification. I've taken both of those certifications. They're fantastic. You're all into education. You want to get some education about what it is that you can do to make an impact in your community and to understand these ecosystems from up in the high in the air, on the ground, and down beneath. Take these classes. They're fantastic. They're hybrid. You do some of it online. You do some of it in person. And lots through public programs and more. So there's a lot happening there. And just to mention, too, most of our environmental education programs happen at Wakamatsu Farm. All of our environmental educations have something to do with the natural resources at Wakamatsu Farm. So it's definitely a big part of what we do. Speaking of, Riperia Festival, Sunday, Wakamatsu Farm. We're expecting up to 1,000 people joining us that day. Make a reservation. Tell your friends about it. Why is it important that we highlight and educate our community about native plants? Native plants are fire resistant or adapted. They are habitat for wildlife, food. They are drought tolerant often. Once they're established, they go on their own. They don't need pesticides or herbicides. They're absolutely beautiful. And Wakamatsu Farm has one native plant garden on it already that's been established for about 8 years. It's the centerpiece of this festival, so you can see what native plants look like when you're tending them, taking care of them, the way that the Native Americans did in here for millennia. So it's connecting people to local landscapes through the art of native plants. We'll have all these teaching benefits, but we're having that right brain, left brain thing going on where people get to explore it and think about it differently and get involved in it, while educators, artists, specialists, scientists, culture keepers, and many others help you to explore the relationships that all things have to plants, which, by the way, we depend on for survival also. So it's fun learning. You guys like fun for your community. Come, all right? So this is the main stage of the Ripe Area Festival. The Quercus douglasii, right? The California blue oak. What better space for the stage of Ripe Area Festival? So this is where the main stuff will be going on. And isn't it a beautiful specimen? It's right there in the native plant nursery. There's a lot of these trees in California and in your backyard and your neighborhoods. People don't understand the cultural and resource value of this tree at all. It's my favorite native plant. It provides food to animals, humans, and during the Ripe Area Festival, you'll get to learn about how to make food out of this, but I do caution you to sustainably harvest. Don't just go out there and take all the food from the animals, especially if you're not going to use it, because animals depend on this. This is a keystone species. There are many, many species of animals in our environment that depend upon this tree for their livelihood. And for millennia, this was the main food source for the Native Americans in this place. So it's a perfect place for that stage to be set. Now we're going to transition and start talking a little bit about Wakamatsu Farm. Everybody doing all right? We're good? Okay. All right. So, I promised to talk about Wakamatsu Farm, my passion, one of my favoriteest places in the whole wide world. Yes, favoriteest places in the whole wide world. And again, how I found the Conservancy and how many, many, many other people find the Conservancy. Remember, we preserve open space that there's no development on. This farm is unique because it has buildings on it, right? It's the pillars, where the pillars of the Conservancy come to life, the conservation, the stewardship, and education, all come to life at Wakamatsu Farm. It's our flagship property. And it is called Wakamatsu Farm because it is the site of the first Japanese colony in America. Yes, it's in your county. It's the birthplace of the first Japanese Japanese American birthright citizen, so that's the second thing. And it's the resting place of the first Japanese woman and immigrant who died and is buried on American soil. We're going to talk about these concepts a lot more as we dig deeper into the history. But it's also a National Estate Historic Landmark because of its designation, because of where it is. It is a natural laboratory and playground where we have a lot of fun, like Ripe Area Festival. It's also working lands providing food to our community. So like I said, it's the place where everything we do come to life. We conserve and preserve that land forever, we steward that land, and we do our education programs there. Where's it located? This is Placerville, Cold Springs Road. This is Coloma. It's right here. So if you've driven by the big Wakamatsu Farm sign, then that sign is right about here. This is Gold Trail School. That's a cookie cutout to Wakamatsu Farm. As you can see, there's a pond there. There's a white farmhouse you've probably seen if you've gone by, and that's a pullout of it. And it's 272 acres surrounding the school on both sides of Cold Springs Road. So, deeper dive. The preservation of history, land, culture. Really exciting stuff to me. And I like this statement that the ghosts of the past must be allowed a place to tell their story. So as I go through these slides, I'm going to juxtapose the past and the present to help you understand where it came from and where it is today. So, I mentioned it as a landmark. It is California State Registered Landmark, Historic Landmark. This says, and this plaque is in the parking lot of Gold Trail School, remember that's in the middle of the farm. We don't own the school, by the way. It's obviously county-owned. The Wakamatsu Tea and Silk Farm Colony, cited the only tea and silk farm established in California, first agricultural settlement of pioneer Japanese immigrants who arrived at Gold Hill on June 8, 1869. Despite the initial success, it failed to prosper. It marked the beginning of Japanese influence on the agricultural economy of California, which is big. California Registered Historical Landmark number 815, plaque placed by the State Department of Parks and Recreation in cooperation with the Japanese American Citizen League, El Dorado County Historical Society, and Friends of the Centennial Observance on June 7th, the day before the colonists arrived 100 years prior. This was the centennial dedication in June of 1969, 100 years after the colony arrived. This is the governor then, Ronald Reagan, came in on a helicopter, landed, and helped to do this dedication. These are members of the community. I know at least two of them, and they are still in the area, and they, of course, came to the farm and have been docents and so forth. This is Reagan and Guess. Juxtapose this to closer to now. This was our sesquicentennial celebration on June 2019. Our sesquicentennial celebration happened exactly 150 years after the colonists' arrival. The pinnacle of the festival was June 8th, 2019, okay? That was a Saturday. Best day of my life. Remember, I was hired to plan this festival. Big deal, right? 3 years it took me, hired in 2016. This is some of our most distinguished guests that day. This is the era of the Tokugawa shogunate. This is the era of the Matsudaira clan line. These are descendants of the colonists. We'll come back to a few of them later, but that's the juxtaposition between the past and the present, the work of restoration. Yeah, this was the Grainer farmhouse, the historic farmhouse, abandoned in the 1980s, and how it stood for decades until the Conservancy purchased the property in 2010. The work of restoration. That's the before picture. This is the after picture. Before picture. After picture. About $1 million in grants and private donations, mostly grants, have gone into the restoration of this historic, important farmhouse. That's upstairs. Before. After. Before. After. You feel like you're in the optometrist. Which one? Left. Right? That's right. So, saving the farm, what's it take? Grant funding, private donations, a lot of really dedicated volunteers who are really bought into the mission and really behind the preservation of this space. Some of them are Japanese American, most of them are not. That's also interesting too. I'm not Japanese American. Why am I so interested in it, right? Something about this place is luring, draws you in and draws you back again. This is the historic farmhouse view from the Kiyaki Garden, where we have our events there, many of our events. The Ripe Berry event's not going to happen here because it's huge. This venue here can hold about 200-300 people, depending upon seating. This tree right here was planted by the Japanese immigrants. It's the oldest Japanese elm in the state of California, and if you come to the farm, you can visit the tree. Here's some other scenic views of the farm. What ARC has done here is created a space where people can enjoy a natural environment in all seasons of the year. There's a pond on the property. There's a lake loop trail around it that is wheelchair accessible. It has beautiful sunsets and views. We do stargazing out there, for a public program, and wine and stargazing. All seasons of the year, that's that trail I was talking about. This is the farmhouse in spring with cherry blossoms and the kiyaki just beginning to bloom. This is a tea house, a labor of love that our docents have been committed to that take care of the farm. Isn't it beautiful? It was actually a high school construction project and brought onto the site on a trailer and then built up, right? And there's a garden around it. And you'll see all this if you come to Riperia. So, historical context of the Gold Hill residents. So the Native Americans, the Nisenan, lived in this area for at least 6,000 years. That's commonly considered to be a reasonable number that most people can accept. Some people say 12,000. Some people say more. They were the original stewards of this land, right? For millennia. And Gold Hill's a beautiful place to live, so that's where they would have lived also. And then came the gold rush. We know all the stories behind the gold rush. It's a very fascinating part of local history, but also devastating to the Native Americans and the environment, right? They're still picking mercury out of the rivers. You're still getting all that mercury in the fish that you might pull out of those rivers. There are guidelines about how much fish you should eat from these rivers. Wasn't like that for millennia. And then we have the Japanese colonists right there between 1869 and 71. We'll explore that history more. You have the Veerkamp family, a very prominent local family that farmed successfully at Wakamatsu Farm for about 130 years. And then you got the Conservancy preserving this place forever. Arguably, the Nisenan and the Conservancy have the most in common. Is that fair? Arguably, the Gold Rush and the Veerkamps have the most in common. Is that fair? Extracting resources, for the most part, for benefit. This right here in the middle is the most unusual. There's lots of stories about Gold Rush and historic farming families. Historic farming families are something that's all over America, right? Gold Rush is unique to California. Lots of, as I explained, conservation organizations and land trusts. Lots of places where Native Americans are. But there is only one site of the first Japanese colony in America, and it's Wakamatsu Farm. Okay? Just for understanding, there was a census taken in 1870. This is the year after the colonists arrived. There were 55 Japanese people in America in 1870. 22 of them were at this farm, per the census. So why is that so fascinating? Why is that piece so fascinating, besides the fact that it's the first, right? And there's 3 firsts, actually, at the farm. It's that fascination that many of us have with Japan, this sovereign nation since 660 before the Common Era. And it's an island nation with over 14,000 islands in it. There's 430 islands with inhabitants on it. But the main island here in Japan, Honshu, is the most inhabited. So that's an interesting part of their history. The historical context for Wakamatsu goes back to the Tokugawa shogunate. Remember that visitor I talked about? His family ruled Japan as a shogunate from 1603 to 1867. This is about 300 years. If you've seen or read James Clavell's Shogun, that is a historical fiction that's based upon the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate. It was a very popular miniseries in the 80s. I remember it being on TV back when, you only had like 5 channels. And now, in more modern times, they remade the Shogun series, and it became a huge success. People are fascinated with this history. The Tokugawa shogunate is an interesting time in history. This is a fantastic production, and folks like me and the docents are geeking out on this completely. We're just like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever. It won boodles of Emmys. It was one of the only series that's won. It's a multi-language international series that won many awards. It's fantastic. It's very, very, very well made. And they're making another series too, so I'm super stoked. So that's the Tokugawa shogunate. Relative peace and prosperity during that time. But it all changed during the Boshin War. Aizu Wakamatsu in 1868 was the last battleground, the last stronghold of the Tokugawa shogunate, and the Matsudaira clan line was loyal to the Tokugawa shogunate, which lost the Boshin War, and the castle in Aizu Wakamatsu fell. It ended the Edo period in Japan, a long time, hundreds of years, and started the Meiji Restoration, which is still the time period in Japan now, time of modernization, moving forward. The samurai story that many people hear about the Gold Hill samurai has to do with the connection between Aizu Wakamatsu and the samurai legacy. Aizu Wakamatsu is very well known and very proud of its samurai legacy. There's a samurai school in Aizu that I've been to. It's fantastic. And the Bushido code was very much indoctrinated in this culture. So these are some of the terms, actually the main terms that are the code of the Bushido. This young man here is the heir and descendant of the clan lord leader, who I'll talk about in a minute. And this monument exists at Wakamatsu Farm. It was dedicated during the Sesquicentennial Festival, and it's this word here, righteousness. And it's about doing the right thing. It's not about self-righteousness. It's about returning to the space. He fulfilled the promises of his descendants by coming to Aizu Wakamatsu, because Lord Katamori Matsudaira, his forefather, empowered a man leading the colonists to come to America and establish a colony that he himself intended to come to, but he never made it. He sent the 22 colonists, including samurai, craftsmen, farmers, women, and children, and one physician. They came to California, they landed, and they came to California aboard the PMS China. This is an actual picture of that boat, which no longer exists. But the cabin of the PMS China is in Tiburon. It's been preserved. It's an event space. I've been there too, of course. It's beautiful. And if you go, Captain Jack will give you a tour. They brought lots of products with them to start their tea and silk farm. I'm not kidding about Jack. It's not Johnny Depp. It's different captain. That would be weird, right? So this is a juxtaposition to, again, the future, the sesquicentennial. Again, this is the heir of the Tokugawa shogunate at Wakamatsu Farm. This is Executive Director Elaine DeLacy of ARC. This is the heir and descendant of Katamori Matsudaira, dressed in his forefathers' traditional garb. He took it seriously. I liked it. It was great. He was a star of the show. Isn't he looking good in his outfit? This is the Consul General of Japan in San Francisco at the time. And this is yours truly, toasting to the success of a sesquicentennial. So here's the brief history of the colony. 1869 to 1870, they were developing their tea and silk farm. They showed their wares at various California fairs. They won awards. People had never seen anything like the products that they brought. Remember, 22 people of the 55 in America, nobody else was bringing products, and these guys were farming, right? So that was exciting. Tea and silk, right? Very fascinating, very exotic, and never seen before. Unfortunately, they suffered from environmental and other problems. If you have ever farmed, or actually if you ever gardened, you know how difficult it is to maintain crops, to grow a tomato with deer running through your yard. I mean, you name it, right? So yeah, I'm facing a lot of that. I totally get it. And then there was drought too. They diverted some water from a mining ditch. It killed off the rest of their plants. So they disbanded and they dispersed. And that's the way of farming, right? Who were those colonists? We have photographs, reproductions of the photographs left behind by the colonists that you can see in the farmhouse. These are some of those photographs. We know who some of these people are. We don't know who most of them are. We know that some of them stayed in America, and we know that some of them went back to Japan. This was the leader, the man that I mentioned that led them. He was actually a Prussian. So he was a foreigner in Japan. He was an honorary samurai. That's a very rare title. There were about 5 of them ever passed out to foreigners, and this guy got one of them. He was an arms dealer to Katamori Matsudaira, so he was doing something to help him win the war, which he did not win. He married a samurai class woman. He's the father of the first Japanese American birthright citizen born on the farm. I mentioned the census. Mary Schnell was 5 months old when the census was taken, and he's the father, and his Japanese wife is the mother. We don't know what happened to him. He's a mystery. If you can find that out, that's a great research project. Nobody can figure it out. He disappears. We don't know what happened to this fellow. He might have gone back to Japan and was killed for his part in the war. That's one speculation. He might have gone off prospecting someplace else. Who knows? We don't yet. But the most famous of the colonists is Oki-san. She was the nursemaid to Schnell. She was peasant class. And she is that first Japanese woman, an immigrant, who died and is buried at Wakamatsu Farm. Her grave is on site at Wakamatsu Farm. If it weren't for her life and her death and her grave and the headstone, the story of the colony would be lost. She's a bit of a romantic character by some standards. Many books have been written about her. There's a book over there that's written by an historian. This is the only book of Wakamatsu that was written by an historian. All the rest of the accounts are historical fictions because not a lot is known about Oki-san, but this particular doctor who lives in West Virginia did all the research and put together an academic book that you can buy. Stories, poems, movies, short films, songs, you name it, have been made about Oki-san, but she's not a well-known person outside of here and outside of Aizu and Wakamatsu in Japan. So she's a bit of a budding star, you could say. She was discovered when a news reporter from the Bay Area came out to investigate the rumors of a Japanese princess buried in Gold Hill. That sounds alluring, right? So he came out and he discovered her grave, and then the story was on. And that was back in the late 20s. This is Oki-san's gravestone. As you can see, there's a very large crack in it. It's an original gravestone. It says, in memory of Oki, died 1871, age 19 years, a Japanese girl. So she was young. She would have been maybe 17 when she came. So that creates a narrative that is very, pulls at your heartstrings, right? This young woman leaves her homeland as a refugee from war. Probably absolutely her town was destroyed. And they were basically running for their lives and for a new life in America to fulfill their version of the American dream. But sadly, she died of fever early in the story. Here's her grave during the sesquicentennial. Lots of love lavished on this first person. Firsts are very important to Japanese people. Graves are very important. And of course, honoring the dead and your ancestors is important. So that's very important to this narrative too. This is her grave today. You could see her original headstone restored on the grave, and we put a structure around it, and our volunteers lovingly tend to it because it's an incredibly important part of this story. Again, it's the reason why we know the farm existed. These are many visitors who have come through the years. Nowadays, this is an interesting picture here because look, there's no trees around it at all. This was in like the 60s or the 70s, and this is ground cutting of Gold Trail School behind it. There is a monument to Oki-san in Aizu Wakamatsu on the mountain Siburi that's overlooking a beautiful big lake. This is a photograph of Japanese our Wakamatsu docents that went with the El Dorado County Chapter People to People back in 2015 with our International Sister Cities visit. This is the first time I went to Japan. I've been back once since for this next cultural exchange. I've made friends with my Japanese host family. They came here to America and stayed in my home with me. Very exciting for me and my partner to have the opportunity to host these people who've been so gracious and kind to me. And I'm super, super excited that I'm going back to Japan with my partner at the end of October, where we will stay with my host family again. So this place creates connections between international people. What an important part of our heritage to preserve. Don't you agree? Especially considering at one time we were at war against this nation. Think about that, right? So, who were the other colonists that we know of? The samurai, Matsunosuke Sakurai, lived for the rest of his life at Wakamatsu Farm, worked for the Vierkamp family. He's the one that put marker on Oki-san's grave. He's buried in the Pioneer Cemetery down in Coloma. And actually, ARC worked with a very dedicated docent in the state parks to mark his grave. Because even though he put the stone on Oki-san's grave, he was in an unmarked grave. But now, thanks to the Conservancy's effort and the effort of those who are concerned, he has a marker on his grave, and you can visit it too. Craftsman, Kuninosoki Masamizu. Kuni was a craftsman. He's a translator, carpenter, a merchant, among other things. He married Carrie Wilson, a woman of African-American descent. His descendants live in California, and by the way, they are the first Japanese, Native American, and African-American people in the world. Think about it, right? And this is a new discovery, too, because history stays alive. This woman found her ancestry through a genealogical search. And she just discovered us, and we discovered her, and Andrea is becoming a friend of mine. Kuni's buried in Colusa. We don't know about the rest. We do know about some of these, though, and I could go on, because that's my thing about Wakamatsu. We know some of these people and their descendants, and they're connected to Wakamatsu Farm too. Remember, some people came to the festival. They're also coming back soon. I'll talk about that in a minute. But some of these we don't know, but history's alive. It's always changing. People hear about this farm and they're like, hold on, I know, I have an ancestor, da, da, da. That's how they find us, right? It's really, really exciting, by the way, to somebody like me. It's just like, whoa, we found another one. So, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the Vierkamp family who took over the farm after the colony disbanded in the early or mid 1870s and successfully farmed the land for over 30 years. I keep this picture here because that's the shape the farm was in when ARC purchased the property. By the way, there was no assessed value to any of the buildings on the property. They were all condemned when ARC bought it for fair market value from the Vierkamp family in 2010. At any rate, they definitely were key members of the community, postmasters, teachers, you name it. And I'm sure you guys, you probably all know Vierkamp in this room, right? I think we all do, right? One of them is in our board of supervisors and has been for a long time. Here's a Vierkamp family around 1874. This man here was alive when the colonists, this is Henry, he was alive when the colonists were there, and he was part of the rediscovery of the colony. When the Japanese reporter came over, he was an eyewitness. He told the story. That's important for carrying on the legacy. Anyway, it helps when you have a family back in those early times, when you have 6 sons, right? It's a recipe for success because you lose a lot of kids, right? And they'll bring wives, and they'll work the farm, and they'll carry on your legacy. It's kind of the luck of the draw sometimes, right? So here is a Vierkamp family member holding the banner and the sword that were left behind by the Japanese colonists. Don't know why they left it behind. These are valuable items. The Tonto sword is a woman's weapon. It dates back to the 15th century. It's got Tokugawa mons, which is also the Matsudaira mon. A mon is a family crest, and you can't see it in here, but it's a hollyhock leaf, and I'll show it to you in a minute. Anyway, this was in 1930. There with some distinguished guests, members of the Vierkamp family, and also we think this man might be a descendant of the Matsudaira clan. So they did make it over. This is a better picture of the banner. Isn't it beautiful? These artifacts and the photographs are in safekeeping in the California State Parks archives. But they've done us a kindness in restoring it and putting it into cases so that we can display these items as part of the story when we have big events that are Japanese cultural events. This is that mon I talked about that's both the Matsudaira and the Tokugawa mon, because the Matsudaira and the Tokugawa families are related by birth. Their families go back to something like the 500s or something like that. And this is an opportunity to see the banner and the sword. Wow, look at how close this is coming. I'm a busy person, by the way, have I mentioned? This pilgrimage is happening, a partnership between ARC and the Nichi Bay Foundation. This will be our 4th pilgrimage. They will load buses up with Japanese American people, 4 buses, Sacramento, South Bay, East Bay, and San Jose, and about 200 people will come on October 4th for a gathering, the largest gathering in history of Wakamatsu descendants. We've found more, remember? So now we have more people. Some are coming from Japan and other areas. Some live in California. It's going to be a really exciting time. You can purchase a ticket for this. What's the date? Today, the 19th. This is the deadline, actually. This is a deadline to purchase a ticket at nichibay.org, Wakamatsu-pilgrimage. We're lucky to have, remember, those dedicated docents and volunteers that love stuff like this. So we've got some folks coming to help out with that. It'll be an immersive experience into the history of Wakamatsu Farm, taiko drumming, so performances, speeches, a bento box lunch, and tours of the farm. It's going to be fantastic. Oh, by the way, Geika Kansaki. What's better than coming to the site of the first Japanese colony in America and getting some sake, right? I'm looking forward to it. So I mentioned it's working land today. ARC also leases the property to resident and off-site farming operations. We've had many farmers come through. Some have been successful, some have not been successful. Fog Dog Farm is tearing it up. They came 5 months before the festival, and they stuck it out during the festival with 4,000 people rolling through their backyard. And they provide this beautiful, better than organic food that's in the farm stand that's at Wakamatsu Farm in these fields. They have 10 organic acres. And then we have a cattle rancher now that's working the land to produce meat for the community. It's organic, grass-fed, you name it, the best kind of meat that you can possibly find, way better than the stuff in the grocery store. And by the way, you have to have animals on a land that's been worked for this many years. If you don't have animals on this land, it goes fallow, it turns into weed city, it's just a mess. So you have to have munchers out there, munching the ground, stomping it up, and then doing the whole reproductive cycle too, helping out with the nutrients in the biomes in the soil. So that's a critical part of keeping the farm alive too, because it's 272 acres. Some of it's oak woodland, some of it's pasture land. We have a new education center at Wakamatsu Farm. I talked about how important education is to the mission of the Conservancy and the space that is Wakamatsu Farm. So I've been raising funds for this, this education center for 7 years now. It is a game changer for us. It'll hold 94 people. Phase 1 is completed. It's a pavilion open building, and we're now working on the phase 2 planning, and I'm, of course, fundraising. For that, as the development director, one of my key roles is fundraising and event planning and donor relations and marketing and also PR and talking to a room of people like you. It's a lot of hats. But anyway, if you'd like to donate to the education center at Wakamatsu Farm, talk to me. You can rent the farm for your events, your experience of your own history at Wakamatsu Farm. We've had many events. I also manage event management and venue planning and rentals. And we have some really interesting people that come through. They do their weddings. They also have their meetings or their team builders. And the people that come to the farm, want to rent the farm, are into the mission, right? We are very reasonably priced for what you get, especially a rustic farm experience, but you've got up to 272 acres to play on. That's pretty remarkable. And we're liberal. We're very generous about the spaces that you can use. So you can walk around the trail with your group. You can use the farmhouse. You can use the field. You can use the big stage that we have. Whole 9 yards. It's still rustic. We're still building infrastructure. Not everything has electricity or water. You should know that. You can visit Wakamatsu Farm, public and private events, open farm days, volunteer work days, and all these specialty classes that you can find at arconservancy.org/events. By the way, you can also join Ripe Area this Sunday. Have I plugged it enough? You need me to say it again? Ripe Area this Sunday, 10 to 4, free event, free family-friendly fun, hands-on, learning, and fun. It's going to be fantastic. And also please support ARC. We are your local land trust. We are do-gooders. We are the only land trust in your community, as I've explained. You can do all these things, become a member, a land steward, volunteer, donate, join our events, visit our lands and leave no trace, right? Rent the farm, school programs, join our legacy circle, give part of your legacy to the farm and we'll recognize you in your lifetime and help you fulfill your lasting wishes. Invest in our stock fund, host a fundraiser for us, and share our story. That's big. Tell people who we are. Everybody should know that we're helping them out. And never, ever, 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 ever stop caring about your environment. Can you do that for us? Awesome. That's what I got to say. Now for questions. Yes?
What did you pay originally for Watsumi Farm?
$3.2 million.
Pardon?
$3.2 million is what we paid for Wakamatsu Farm, fair market value. And that is about the highest that land goes for in this county because it's in the place where it's at. Gold Hill's a gorgeous place. If we hadn't purchased the farm, it would have most likely been divided into ranchettes, 10 to 15 acre ranchettes. And if the community had let that happen, who knows what would have happened to the legacy of this place and Oki-san's grave. So,
Tax benefits
to who?
to the seller.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Often, what's that? The question is, are there tax benefits to selling land to the Conservancy? And the answer is yes. The benefit comes after we buy your property if you give us a seller donation. And the reason why people want to do that, in addition to the tax benefit, is that basically we are doing all the work of a realtor. There's no realtor involved in it. We're the realtor. So we save all that money. We do the appraisal. We do all the closing, all of the things that go along with it. So basically, we're serving that need in a real estate transaction. So then the idea is that you would donate back to ARC the approximate value of what your realtor costs would be. And that's a tax benefit. Yes?
Have you ever done a memorials there for someone passed away, paid for them?
You mean somebody rents the farm to do their own celebration of life? Is that your question?
Yes, you've done that before?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Many, many times. And sometimes it's been somebody who was a volunteer. And that's, of course, a sad moment for us, but we're very, very happy to provide that service to them. And, that's part of life. So we're happy to support that part of life too. Weddings, meetings, you name it. And graduation ceremonies, birthday parties, anything that you are interested, as long as it's peaceful gathering, and you're not going to set the farm on fire. Yes?
What is the relationship between the American River Conservancy and the Nature Conservancy here in El Dorado?
The Nature Conservancy is a huge organization, and the way I look at them is they're kind of like a clearinghouse of a lot of money that comes from the state level. So we work with them on certain grants. They've actually donated they've donated a grant for $1 million for the acquisition of Wakamatsu Farm, and then they'll get involved with certain projects that align with their goals. And it's a strong partnership, absolutely.
Do you get involved on riparian habitats, creeks that dump into the American River? If that riparian habitat happens to be in a SMUD easement?
No, we can't get involved in other people's property. And I mean, we've got our hands full with our own property. Obviously, we would condone such actions, but we don't speak out publicly about, much. It's not our space to do that. Every once in a while, we have something to say about something that's obviously hugely environmentally impactful that people might choose to vote on, and we might make a statement about that. But we wouldn't kind of be a watchdog, if you will, for the trespasses of others. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, maybe you might consider a conservation easement.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, if it was on, and so to understand the scope of lands that we manage, we have a lot of trespassers. We've got a lot of people dumping trash. We've got homeless people camping on our property. We've got all the environmental other problems that happen. So that's why donating to our stewardship programs is such a big thing, because I didn't mention this when I was talking about stewardship, but it's relatively easy, not easy, but relatively easy to find money to purchase land, to purchase conservation easements. It's not easy at all to find money to steward land. So we've been doing these concerts at Wakamatsu Farm called Concerts for a Cause to raise money for our stewardship programs, because we need some unrestricted money in a pool that we can draw on when we have emergencies and things that happen that we've got to clean up or take care of. And that's what we use the Concert for a Cause and the Resilience Reserve specifically for. So if you want to donate to stewardship, the Resilience Reserve is that bucket of money that we use. Good question. Sorry that it's not probably what you wanted to hear. But I'm glad you're vigilant about what's happening. You need to be. I mean, you should be. I hope you are. I wish everybody was as vigilant as you. That's maybe the best way to say it.
It's a wildlife corridor.
That's
And every year, there's at least 26, 30 species of birds that stop over. And after they cleared everything, there was nothing for the birds, nothing.
That's tough. And as a neighbor to the lands like that, you should be writing, I would be writing letters. I would be making phone calls. Maybe you've tried?
I tried that, and I tell you, when it comes to fuel reduction and fire,
Yeah, as I said, I have 42 acres in Georgetown. I mean, I live around a tinderbox. And I've got Forest Service on 3 sides, but I am very heartened by the fact there's a lot of clearing going on in my backyard, and it's PG&E. Then that's not a happy, always situation. The workers are not always on top of things the way that you would think they would be, but I'm happy to see anybody out there working to reduce the fuel. Yeah.
I have a question about this.
I'm so glad.
About the embodiment, but it says you need to have to call to get the ticket, or
It's a free event, so you can show up to it, but I suggest that you make reservations ahead of time. And you can do that on the website with the QR code or the bit.ly link.
all right, but if you showed up with just this, would they allow you to park?
You don't even have to show up with that.
Okay.
You just come. It's a free event. We're asking for a nominal $10 parking donation for this event, which helps us steward Wakamatsu Farm, right? Directly benefits Wakamatsu Farm. So please pay the parking donation, right? That's a small price to pay for the all-day entertainment that you'll get at this fabulous event. Thank you for asking that question so I could promote it more. All right, what else do we have? Burning questions, curiosities. Oh,
Well, I don't know, it's been a long time ago that I went out, and I don't know how I found out about it, and this was the event where the spiritual, what would they be? They were all dressed, and then it had to do with her grave.
I don't know, because I've personally witnessed a multitude of ceremonies at Oki-san's grave. It is a sacred space. And I've seen Western ceremonies. I've obviously seen many Japanese ceremonies. During the pilgrimage that's happening on the 4th of October, there will be ceremonies at Oki-san's grave. It's a pilgrimage site, right? So people come to experience that walk, that walk to that place and pay their respects. And so, of course, you're going to have people that are spiritual that are there to guide the experience and most uniquely guide a Japanese, a Buddhist, or Shinto experience there. Yeah.
And then they had the beautiful robes, and then they had
Right.
the tents where, they had things that you could see and you could purchase and so forth. And then I remember going out and you had the meat, right? Because I shop at Fog Dog.
Huh.
And so right across, I remember that one barn, the white one, had meat, right?
It sort of sounds like you came to the sesquicentennial to me because you said you went to Fog Dog Farm and they were up and running. Yeah. So that's 2019. That was the big event I think you're talking about. But no meat. We haven't had a slaughterhouse going.
I mean, right across from Fog Dog, there's the big white barn, and I remember it had meat, and it must have been grown, there. And it
That could have been way before ARC's time too. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think the Veerkamp family, I never heard of the Veerkamp family having ceremonies at the site. Think about it. You're running a farm. It's got this grave on it. People come and they're hopping the fence to visit this person because it's private property. If I had $100 for every single person who said to me, I used to come here and trespass when I was a kid, maybe we would be further ahead in our restoration process at Wakamatsu Farm. It was private property. I wouldn't want people wandering through my pasture with my bulls, right? With my bulls batting them around. And when we first purchased the property, there were still bulls in the field. So it was taking your life in your hands going to Oki-san's grave, right? But people were dedicated to it. Sometimes they came from Japan to do that. So, but now they can talk to ARC and we'll let them come. And you can come on certain days when we're open. By the way, it is still important to understand that ARC owns this property. It is private property. It's not public. People can't just show up and say, oh, I'm here, although they do a lot. If somebody's there and can kind of keep an eye on things, they'll let them come in. But people wander through. The farmers are like stuck with, hey, who are you? What are you doing here? So, we don't lock it and put a, barbed wire fence around it. That's not our thing. But contact us. By the way, I didn't say this enough. If you want to do a tour at Wakamatsu Farm, somebody knowledgeable like me will guide a tour for you. And you can bring a group. And again, it's a nominal price because we want to share this story with as many people as possible. So schedule a tour. Come out and have somebody talk to you and you walk around for 2.5 hours. Tell people about that too. Yeah?
You got native plant sales going on there too.
You're right.
And is it too late to order it online or?
The deadline, I don't know. You'd have to look on the event page. I think it's today, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's today, but it might have been Thursday. It was only a 4-day window, but you can buy native plants on site from the Native Plant Society. I'm really glad you brought that up because we are partnering with the El Dorado chapter of the Native Plant Society. They're running their plant sale and distributing their plants on site during the festival, and they'll have extra plants there that you can buy. Thank you for asking that question. They've all been great questions.
You did great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.